Now we will call the regular Commissioners Court meeting for November 17th. All commissioners are present. First item of business, discussing possible action on approval of payroll number 23 for the period ending November the 11th.
I move we approve payroll number 23.
I'll second that motion.
Motion
What would happen if somebody voted against it?
We'd have to go through every single paycheck, we're gonna make sure they got paid.
I asked the question.
they rescind your paycheck.
Okay.
Whoever votes against it gets rescinded, right? Debbie, can you do that?
Yeah, sure.
Just say yes, okay?
You know, but since you and Debbie in that side room for the rest of the day, y'all figure out what's wrong with that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next we have discussing possible action on approval of personnel action forms.
Hang on, let's see.
Gesundheit.
Mark Chadwick, new emergency services, management and
Is he
fire
here?
marshal. He is here.
He's here.
He is not in the room,
But he started
but
on
I'll
Monday.
give you a brief background. He has a huge resume of emergency services from San Antonio,
So do I, none of them count.
Bexar County. Did you want to apply?
No.
It's too late. But Bexar County worked for City of San Antonio. Bexar County is an excellent, qualified person, and he is excited to be here.
Good.
Yeah,
He's actually written a book on emergency.
he has.
We've had him here doing some training.
Yeah.
With Keith and I, when we had that little Honda area council going,
Yeah,
came and did several trainings. He's pretty sharp.
he's a sharp guy. We're very happy to have him.
Michelle Rodriguez, clerk for JP Ford. Todd Hiley, resignation. Bracken Melodic, resignation. Melanie Godwin, resignation at Carl Sheriff's Office. Rude Rodriguez, increase in, no, promotion, deputy sheriff to criminal investigator. Joe Ramon, new hire. Actually, that should be, did he work here before?
Once upon a time, he was a constable.
All right, I'm gonna have to redo this one as a rehire, so sorry. Are we just doing
Wait,
it
wait,
right
wait.
now?
No, he was an elected official.
Okay.
He was a
Like I
constable,
said,
right?
I apologize.
Yeah, he was
If I remember
He was
this?
the constable.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Bessie Martin, increase with approved slot, also known as now. Deborah Bodenchuk from Extension Services retiring.
Move to approve personnel action form.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have discussing possible action on approval of November 3rd, 2022 Commissioners Court meeting minutes. I don't see them. Are they here?
Just chanting.
November 3rd. You got them? Okay.
Call for those written.
Only three of them here.
I'm gonna change it from there to here. I'll approve those written.
Motion to approve is written.
Second.
2 seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the county auditor's monthly report.
Yes, this is a report with balances as of November 1. So from now to last year's same period, we're at the $21 million mark, and that does not include the TANs and the ARPA money. That's the only thing that this cash excludes. On the third page, that has everything on there broken down by each fund, so you can tell what your funds had at the beginning of November. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
So we'll still be able to make payroll?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we have our debt service at the end to include the money that the precincts have borrowed from the TAN at the bottom of that page.
Pull that one away, November 1st.
What's that?
Pull that supposed to go away November 1st.
Oh, no, that doesn't go away.
Oh, it didn't go away?
That was
Is that what they
stayed.
told us?
He said, but we got early Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Didn't go away.
Sorry.
You have to approve it.
I will approve it.
It looks good.
We got 53 days to spend some money. so-
43, come on.
43?
43?
Is it really?
Yes, sir?
Shoot, I just shaved 10 days off, that's good. Okay. 43 days to spend some money.
No, we don't need to spend
Got
it.
anything in mind?
How about spending some money on some signs for designated parking in the back for commissioners and judges?
God, dang, that comes up
Here.
We got some that says gov.
We can have meet
Don't do
holders.
that.
Sir?
Nobody
Yeah,
pays
meet
attention to that back there. It's got a park.
Park in front, walk in with.
I tried that.
Everybody.
Jordan. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on the auditor's report?
Oh, give me one of the critical plates.
All right. Thank you very much, Edward. Next, we have discussed take possible action on acceptance of state criminal alien assistance program grant for the sheriff's office,
Yes,
the SCAP grant.
6,850.
What does he use that for?
So you can use it for several things. Top of page 5, overtime costs, corrections workforce, construction of corrections facilities, so on.
Okay.
This is what, 6,000 something dollars? I don't know. That's-
All it does is, it goes into the general fund, and then we just take some of those expenses from the general fund to report.
I move that we approve the grant.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Next, we have discussed take possible action on approval of budget amendments.
Yes, we have one for that SCAP grant we just approved, so
Okay.
our revenue and the one-time funds by the 6,850. That's the only budget amendment.
Move we approve the budget amendment.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on approval of line item transfers.
We have one from our district attorney, moving 600 out of office supplies and into cell phone allowance.
Move we approve the line item transfer.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on approval of accounts payables.
Yes, on the cover page shows the invoices over 10,000 or checks over 10,000. We have 2 wire payments. Total AP $801,543.73.
Explain it to me again. It says expense amount 801,000, payment amount 318,000.
Because it's, If it's, some is paid by check, some is paid by wire transfer.
Okay. We're paying out $801,000. All right.
It's 318 plus is, by wire transfer.
Okay.
I'll move to approve accounts payable, no exceptions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? You know, last 2 weeks ago, somebody else had to do that.
I know.
And they were preparing for a lot.
And it was pretty confusing.
Yeah, they handled it all right.
It was very confusing, so don't make that up.
Yeah. Don't be gone very often, okay?
You just need to show me the pages I need to look for.
The back up, the change the page.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on approval of fourth quarter 2022 investment report.
No, the, disbursement since the last.
Number 10.
Oh, you want me to do that too?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're gonna
I move we approve this.
discuss take possible action on, wait, fourth, well, I didn't have disbursements on here, do I? Oh, there it is, right there.
More vote.
I've already skipped past all of you, okay? Let's go to discuss and take possible action on disbursements since last Commissioners Court, sorry.
Utilities in the amount of $42,567.65.
Well, in the last meeting, it's gonna get a lot worse, so just hang tight.
6 more weeks. 3 more meetings, 4.
Two.
I move we approve this first response to the past Commissioners Court.
And I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed and take possible action on approval of the county treasurer's monthly report.
Yes, this is for the month of September. This report does not include district clerk January through October of this year, county clerk civil November of 21 through October of this year, and county clerk criminal October of this year. Total combined funds, $27,424,276.81, and total debt of $26,985,427.
You seem to be managing real well without your support group, your investment board. In other words, you could have done without it, right?
She has done without
She
it.
has done it.
Right. Are you all ready for the motion on this?
Yep, make the motion, we approve the county treasurer's report.
Motion is second, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes. Next, we have discussed the possible action on approval of the fourth quarter 2022 investment report.
Should have better.
Yes, CD totals $3,875,000, and technical fund at $1.6 million. In money market and direct deposit account, we have almost $22 million. The interest rates are starting to go up. At tax pool yesterday, it was 3.94%. The maximum we can get at our bank is 0.7%. And through our CD broker, we have CDs anywhere paying anywhere from 1 to 2.3%. And those rates have gone up as well. So when the tax money starts coming in, I'll look at FNC, CD rates, and tax pool and see which one works best.
How are we limited with where we do the CDs, Debbie? I mean, we got a CD broker, because I've got one, a personal one for 4.1, it's just a 1-year CD.
Yes, he has been sending me, the broker sends me daily what's out there that he has access to. But because we're at the end, y'all are at the end of your money, I haven't proposed anything. But if tax pool looks better, I'll go with them, because there is no time when you can move money in and out as often as you want to, with no time.
That's what our investment committee does, and I recommend you get on that board.
We can just say anything.
I think the new commissioner needs to be on that board. See, you got a whole brand new board.
Throwing you to the wolves already.
Welcome, Danny.
The last committee was so much better than I was. I had to get rid of them, they had competition.
We were irreplaceable.
Want to go to all the conferences.
Some of the most exciting conversations I've ever listened to.
I have to do the worst class they put on.
Investment.
You didn't like it.
Huh?
You didn't like it.
Well,
Be honest.
I think the speakers could have been more knowledgeable.
Some
Okay?
of them were.
Some of them were. Huh? I was sleeping right next to you. I certainly wasn't staying awake during parts of those, and I don't know what Edward and Mr. Beck were doing, but
Wear your sunglasses, that way they can't tell.
yeah. All right, do I have a motion?
I move we approve
Second.
the investment report.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion passes. We're going to table item number 13. We have visitors, public comment. Do we have any?
Yes.
There's some new faces out there.
Right. I'm not gonna mess up my place.
Say your last name?
Shank.
Come on up and join us, Mr. Shankin.
Thanks, sir.
What's the champion?
And just identify yourself and your address. And
All right, thank you, Honor and Commissioners, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Grant Shankin. I'm the president of the Laurel Canyon Ranch Property Owners Association, and I'm here representing the residents and property owners of Laurel Canyon Ranch. For background of the Laurel Canyon Ranch, is a development located in the northeast corner of the county off of FM 1283 in Precinct 1. We have approximately 3 miles of main road, County Road 2801 east and west, with 15 side roads, all with cul-de-sacs and no through roads. Approximately 202 properties and about 60% built out. I'm here to request assistance with two concerns that we have as a community. The first relates to safety issues related to traffic violations in the neighborhood. Over the past 3 years, there has been a significant growth in the community, which has led to increased traffic and traffic violations. Residents, contractors, and delivery personnel often violate traffic laws by speeding, running stop signs, and driving recklessly, passing vehicles going the speed limit, running people off the road, and even passing school buses. Our posted speed limit is 30 miles an hour for the majority of the community, with 20 miles an hour in the back section, approximately a mile. We believe that enforcement will promote the best results. However, we're also looking for other solutions, such as speed bumps, better signage, etc. The second concern relates to high-speed internet coverage. Our community has been left out of viable and affordable hardwired high-speed internet. Even though we have conduit infrastructure for fiber, nobody has ever given us a viable solution. The only options we currently have is for satellite or cell-based systems, which have limited capabilities and speeds. We have several residents who work from home that need high-speed internet, as well as several property owners who won't even build until we have high-speed internet. Another concern is emergency Wi-Fi calling capabilities, and I can give you an example. During the Dosco fire, we lost our cell capabilities in the community due to saturation, and cell-based internet was also lost. Therefore, most communication capabilities were cut off within the community. So, we realize resources are limited, but wanted to bring our concerns to your attention and hopes that there are solutions to these issues. So I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. We will look into those things. Is Sago up there? What are they putting a tower up there?
Where exactly is that?
Laurel Canyon Ranch.
Oh, okay.
Just to give you some background, 40 years ago, I was raised bringing cattle in on horseback on Laurel Canyon Ranch. Used to be my grandfather's property. So, it's pretty rough, but it's beautiful. And we didn't have cell service back then either, but well. I think Sago is moving up that direction. I don't know if they've gotten that far.
We said Sago and Arnett,
Yeah.
and expressed our concerns about putting something there.
Up in that area.
Singles, kind of hubs, Rivendell.
Are y'all on Medina Electric or are y'all on,
Bandera.
Bandera Electric?
CBS.
City Public Service?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, please.
We thought that with all the new development that's coming in, there's going to be high-speed internet just adjacent to our property with the, I think it's the Highland or something like that.
Right?
Woodlands.
Woodlands.
And that's going to run up against 2804 and be very close to being able to connect into us. So we thought that if there was some study of our existing infrastructure and that company that was providing internet there might be able to add in to us.
Sure. Well, it's something to look into.
I can assure them, it's gonna be satellite, it's gonna be state-of-the-art satellite for satellite and fiber, that you're gonna have power within a mile of there, or 2 miles. Operator is on contract on Verizon yesterday.
Okay,
I know they'll have.
good. Okay, well, with that,
I'll just check what you're gonna
we'll
have.
stand in recess, come on up and visit with these guys and they can give you more information maybe. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 10 o'clock version of the Medina County Commissioners Board. Before we start the business, we want to recognize someone who has spent almost a lifetime working here for the county and done a great job for us. Mr. Newman, would you?
Yep, Nacho. Cowboy.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to present you with this plaque for your service and dedication. It's very rare you get somebody like Nacho that is so humble, does what you ask, doesn't argue, doesn't question you. Middle of the night, you know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we have to go out for flooding issues, whatever it is. You know, we always pick up the phone and came to work. Both of us started in precinct 2. He was one of the reasons why I'm here right now. He hard-headed and forced me to do it, you know, so I thank him for that. I thank you for everything you've done for us, and there's it.
Yeah, he's one of the first ones I got out of the Vine area, coming down here to work, and like I say, every day you call, if we have flooding issues, it come from the Ennis, or where it was, and finally, I think the driver got a little bit best of him, and they got a new commissioner in his district, and he made a good move and a good choice. And not only thank you for everything you've done for the county.
How many years,
I
Tim?
appreciate y'all giving
8
me a
years.
shot.
8 years.
He was cowboy for 50 plus, correct?
Yeah.
And decided to come to the county, and so he 8 years with us, and now he's retiring and going back to the cowboy.
Congratulations.
I wish I would have come sooner to the county and then go to Cowboy.
So there you go, Pop. Hey, y'all can,
Nacho, congratulations.
y'all can stand behind us.
Come on up.
Have a chair, have a seat.
Yeah. Come on in. You can have mine. But if you have to, you gotta stay.
You're not gonna get it.
May have to take a panorama shot.
Hey, some of you guys go down front. Whoa. Stephen, you're not tall enough to be back there.
There's West Side.
Does the family want to get up here and take a picture with him? Y'all?
We have Christmas and Thanksgiving.
The gentleman in the red and white cap, I didn't see you.
Junior.
Go hide in here. If you can't see me, I can't see you, the camera can't see you. We got everybody smiling?
And we're not doing basketball.
So, before y'all leave, I just wanted y'all to know that another announcement, that's a good announcement. 2 weeks ago, we had the Best of Medina County. As y'all all know, 5,000 and some people voted in the county for about 80 different categories. Best place to work in Medina County? Medina County. But thank you for everything. So, what do we need to do with this? We need to put it up somewhere, don't you?
Should be somewhere.
We'll put it out in the hallway?
Would you,
I can get a frame and put it in the hallway. Can I hang it out there by Cheryl somewhere?
that'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, can you take it out of your budget, you know, all that money you have?
Sure.
Archives.
Huh?
Archives.
It's gotta be a record.
Yeah.
Isn't that a record?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Make sure it's recorded.
we're gonna skip forward just a second, and, I'm gonna go on to number 23, Mr. Rhodey. Why don't y'all come on up and, you know, Mr. Miller, we're gonna, 23 and 24 have the same.
You can do all the presentation, we're just gonna.
Maggie's going to do the presentation. Okay, well, it's going to be discuss take possible action on a proposed correction deeds involving July 11th, 2022 conveyance from Texan Bank to Medina County of the following properties: lots 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, block 3 in City of Hondo, and lots 5 and 6, block 16, City of Hondo. That's the Hondo National Bank and the Texan Bank. and no, they're not taking it back. So, go ahead, who wants to talk?
So what the issue is when the property was conveyed per the contract, one property was sold, the other property was gifted, and that conveyance deed included both properties on one deed. And so what we're doing here is just correcting that so that the gift property is on its own separate gift deed, and that the consideration is properly cited for tax purposes primarily. Their CPA pointed out if they're accounting it as a charitable gift, it really needs to be on its own gift deed. And so Mr. Rhodey prepared the deeds on behalf of the bank, and I've reviewed them.
Perfect. Everybody's good with that?
It's a simple transaction.
Okay,
We
it
just,
doesn't change
it
anything.
doesn't change anything, the money doesn't change.
It helps them to get credit, which is the next item we're gonna pass after we pass this one, so.
I'll move we approve the corrected deeds.
Second.
Motion and second, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Then discuss take possible action to authorize the county judge to approve a non-cash charitable report for the Texan Bank property. So that's, allows you all then to get the credit for the gift. Is that
We have to
correct?
get a form signed in addition to the correction deed. And
Yeah.
that will acknowledge that this was, the Honda National Bank property was a gift.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
gentlemen.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Bumping us up a little bit, we
Huh?
appreciate that. Thank you for bumping us up on the order.
Oh, you bet, you bet. Okay, now we're gonna go back to a public hearing to receive public comment regarding vacate and replat of lot 25A, San Antonio Trust subdivision. Is there anybody here on that? Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing and go on to item number 17, discuss take possible action on final approval to vacate and replat lot 25A, San Antonio Trust subdivision. Mr. Rhodey. I told him they sent the B team today. You know, A team's back at the office, I guess, so.
Well, the 18's not coming back. He's going.
Oh, the old, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Just splitting that, I guess it was just a meets and bounds of 5.015 into lots 25B and 25C out of the original lot 25A of the San Antonio Trust subdivision.
I'll make a motion that we approve the vacate and replat of lot 25A San Antonio Trust subdivision.
Second.
Motion is second, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on final approval of vacate and replat of lot 7A, 7B of Sant Laban Stagecoach Hills subdivision located in precinct 2. Mr. Rhodey.
Same thing, it was 7A and 7B, and all they did was the center boundary line, they wanted to change the line to kind of square up one of the houses. They're both family members. That's pretty much all they did, is just change that center division line.
I'm good with it.
All right.
I'll second that.
Does that mean that's a motion?
That's a motion.
Man, you're getting sloppy in your old age here. Motion and a second, any other discussion?
Well, you know, we could make you vote.
No, you're not gonna make me vote.
You bet.
Last Commissioner's Court.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I gotta keep it under 10, okay? Next, we have discussed a possible action on preliminary approval of vacate and replat of lots 119 and 120 Dancing Bear subdivision located in precinct 1. Mr. Rhodey again.
They own 119 and 120, and they want to combine those two lots into 119A.
Great.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Motion. I got a second, anybody? Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have discussed take possible action on preliminary approval of Redbird Ranch subdivision unit 3M through 3B, located in precinct 2. Is there anybody here for that?
I was in
Do you
there.
need anybody here for that?
No,
Okay. It's a preliminary, so.
yeah, preliminary. I will make it that we, pass, this is the first bunch of new houses in probably a year or year and a half that get started back up. And from what I understand, it's gonna be mostly rentals. So that's what's happening to our market on the smaller end homes right now, mostly rentals. But anyhow, I'll approve this And the next thing, I think we have some issues on these, this is not a final, this is just preliminary.
Yes.
Good enough,
You have a motion?
I'm good with it.
And a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on final approval of vacating a portion of lot 34A, not 3A, San Antonio Trust subdivision, and creating lots 1 through 10 of Sandoval subdivision. Mr. Allen.
Yes, we had previously gotten preliminary approvals, we're asking, so we've gotten the water company approval, and I believe they're in the process of installing meters, so we're asking for final approval on the Sandoval subdivision. Man,
Yeah, these lots all front, County Road 5715, and these are requirements, now these the water available. So I'll make a motion that we give final approval to Sandoval subdivision.
Motion in 2 seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Next, we have discussed take possible action on adoption of a resolution authorizing the formation of a adult sexual assault response team. Ms. Wires, Mr. Springer, just so y'all know, last year we actually, I think it was Julie was here, and we approved doing this and getting it going, but somehow it fell through the cracks and never got finalized. So Ms. Swires has taken it by the horns, and she's going to get it finished. So
like Judge Schuchart said, in 2021, the Texas legislature passed a bill requiring county commissioners' courts to form an adult sexual assault response team for the county. The commissioners are required to invite certain statutory members. And so the initial members for our county meeting the statute would start with the Southwest Family Life Center, the DA's office, the sheriff's office, the largest municipal law enforcement agency of the county, which in our case is going to be the Hondo Police Department, largest healthcare provider in the county, which is going to be Medina Healthcare System, the behavioral health unit, which will be the Medina County Health Unit. We also have 2 members at large, Ruby Klein, who has volunteered to participate, and Wayne Springer, who is a former sexual assault investigator who also has SART team experience, and I'll let him talk a little bit about the purpose behind forming the SART team.
So, all of y'all know the Bluebonnet Children's Center, and they were created, and they oversee all the sex crimes and physical abuse that's done on children. And there's a board over there that oversees those, and they do like MDT meetings and stuff. The sexual assault response team. Huh?
MDT.
Multiple disciplinary teams. So
Thank you.
You have your same nurses, your law enforcement investigators, public health, everybody comes together, same as this, is getting formed that oversees those cases to make sure they're tracked properly, the evidence gets sent where it's supposed to go, the investigation is followed up on, and make sure it gets into the prosecutor's hand, and then anything that they need to do with the prosecutors too. So on the adult one, it's kind of the same, but it's not as hands-on. So basically, they oversee the cases that come in to make sure that all the statutory requirements are followed. Like the SANE exams, when they're done, the law says they shall be taken to the lab at DPS or a comparable lab like that. So it just kind of going to track the progress on those cases to make sure they go. And I guess that's about it.
Do we have an idea?
So it's a coordination of agencies to make sure that victims are getting properly tended to, offered the services that are available to them, and then that the investigation side is handled in such a way that we're getting convictions on as many of those cases as possible. And so what y'all have before you is a resolution authorizing the formation of those SART team members and formation of the SART itself. And then the statute also requires that we submit by December 1st of each year, in this case, our preliminary protocol, which outlines kind of how the SART is going to work. There's really no action you have to take on that, but we are required to present it to you. And then each odd numbered year, then you will also be presented with stats in terms of those sexual assault cases coming in, the resolutions on those cases, that type of thing. Just kind of broad numbers, not specifics of individual cases.
Do we have any idea how many sexual assault cases we deal with in a year?
I would probably guess there's reports or I guess for adults, there's not quite as much reported. But I would say the statistics show that only 10% of adult sex crimes are reported. And only less than 1% ever get to the court to prosecute. So I think in Medina County, the last we checked, we were at about 6 to 7 a month.
Okay, I was just curious, 6 or 7 a month?
Yeah. Child cases are triple.
Yeah.
Triple that.
I know that.
That's only 10%.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay.
And I'll just add, Judge, the vast majority of the sex crimes are sex crimes perpetrated against children. The Blue Bonnet Center is very busy. The adult cases, I would suspect, are just a fraction of what we deal with on the child side. But if it would be helpful, we could probably run a report, have a report run.
No, you don't need to do that. I was just curious on an estimate. I haven't really followed up on any of that. Don't know what's going on anymore, but.
Well, statistics are going to show if this is successful with prosecution, the reporting will climb in this county.
Okay.
And it's done it in other counties that have had successful with SART teams. I've been on one before.
Okay.
And the numbers start going up once they see that the victim's getting heard and they're following through with prosecution. Then the numbers start going up because people realize that I can tell and I can get help.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll move we approve adopting the resolution.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all very much. Next, we've already done item 23 and 24. We're going to go to 25, discuss a possible action on approval of Chapter 59 asset forfeiture report submitted by the sheriff. So, are you the sheriff?
No, sir.
Well,
No,
you know.
Walk in later.
How we doing?
Good, how are y'all?
Good.
So Chapter 59, the asset forfeiture there, that's going to be that top, the seizure and forfeiture account that we deal with every year. We do have to report this, all the numbers and everything like that as far as funds in, funds out, because it is a state regulated account. Everything does have to be reported annually to the Attorney General's office. So this is the preliminary report, so that basically I turn around and go back and plug in numbers and report our information for the AG's office.
Perfect. So how much money is in the account right now?
I have to pull that.
Oh,
Yeah, because I'm gonna have to pull that. That's separate because it could be, it's different. It kind of has stuff that comes in and comes out.
Okay.
We started it at $40,915.79, but that's the seizure account. The Chapter 59 started at $9,094.25.
okay. That's okay. I can get it from Debbie or Heather or somebody. I was just curious how much was in there. Perfect. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion approved.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed a possible action on approval of equitable sharing report submitted by the sheriff's office. There you are again.
So the second half is the equitable sharing account. We have an agreement of certification that has to be renewed every year. It is due by November 30th. So this report actually deals with our DEA information and the money that we get from that as well. So this report has to go through equitable sharing just to continue that account, to continue with the DEA equitable sharing that we do receive every year. And so that's going to be this agreement, if y'all see that. That's the actual drafted agreement, ready to go prior to submittal.
Okay.
I'll move that we approve the equitable sharing report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, could you give me the final numbers on that seizures and forfeitures?
Absolutely. I
I'll
can.
give you a holler later. Go ahead.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, Sheriff. Take care. Next, we have discussed take possible action on issuing deed without warranty on the Dehennis alleyway to John and Sylvia Lutz. Now, these next two items, one is to Pargus, one is to Lutz. We're only gonna act on the Lutz one because Mr. Lynch pointed out to me that Mr. Pargus owns half of the land and some estate of his dad owns the other half, so we need to clarify on the Pargus before we do it. But we've done this in the past, people in Dehennis where it was platted and it's no man's land, that nobody owns it, so we do a deed without warranty to them and they can take possession and they do the surveys and everything, so we can act on Lutz, we cannot act on Pargus.
And I've talked to Mr. Pargas since you and I spoke this morning. He's gonna get with me next week to iron out who we're gifting this to.
Okay.
On his side.
Perfect.
So that gives Mr. Luce 10 feet of the alleyway adjacent to the property that he owns in that block. So I'm gonna make a motion that we issue a deed without warranty with the Hennis alleyway to John and Sylvia Lutz.
Motion and second, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on issuing, on declaring equipment on precinct 2 as surplus and/or salvage and authorized disposal.
So I got two vehicles, one has a burned up motor, and I believe that one cannot be sold at auction, it has to go to salvage and scrap.
I'm gonna look into that, because technically it does belong to you, but I'm gonna look into that. If you are able to auction it off, are you wanting to do that, or it's like no?
That one came as a drug seizure.
It's pretty well junk. It's junk. That was.
Okay.
Yeah, Jerry gave me that was a drug possession vehicle.
Okay.
The
If you
other
just
one,
wanna scrap it,
it is
then-
running, but let me know either way. I don't care. I just want them off the yard.
All right.
It's sitting there with a burned up motor and, needs to go.
Did you get the drugs out of it?
Jerry took care of that before I got it, I think.
Okay.
But anyhow, I'd like to get rid of both of them.
Okay. Can you make that motion?
I will make that motion to get rid of salvage equipment.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have discussed take possible action on approval of change orders and other matters regarding the construction of the courthouse annex and the jail addition, and we have no change orders, so we're good on that. Now we have court member announcements.
Yeah, we're still working on multiple projects, with the help of precinct 4, precinct 3, precinct 2, we're all trying to knock these out before Christmas time. Machines are still rolling, nonstop. I appreciate everybody's help.
Same thing going in precinct 2, we got about 4 miles of road ready to pave. We did get some material donated from TechStop. We're gonna use that rock on the top of the road, so I think on November 29th and 30th, we're gonna be paving everything up between the golf course and Highway 90 and that one subdivision, about 4 miles. And then we're looking at, a bunch of work in and around the edges of Castroville and the cost coming up. So that's what we got on the agenda, and like I say, thank God for this crew we put together, a road appraisal crew. It's the best thing ever happened to this county. The amount of roads and the quality of the roads and the construction work we're getting done is next to none. It is phenomenal. But anyhow, I want to thank everybody that on Commissioner Court that helped us put this thing together.
Precinct 3 is doing fine.
Fort Sedgwick?
Fort Sedgwick is doing fine.
Okay, perfect.
43 days.
43 days. Commissioner Lawler, we'll be ready to take over. All right, my replacement's in Dallas today, so he didn't even show up for this, so. Anyway, I gave y'all each a set of letters that, the top page is Governor Abbott sent a letter to me on Monday, outlining what he's going to be doing with the border. There's also Governor Abbott's order number 41, which is an executive order he issued in July. It's another letter that he sent to Colonel McCraw, the head of the DPS, and Major Swelser of the Texas Military Department, and then a letter that he sent to Joe Biden. All these letters basically say that our governor is not happy with anything that's going on at the border. Our president has failed us in trying to support the border. He is going to speed up the DPS activities down there. He's gonna try to turn away. He's gonna try to get more wall built. But the reality of it is, I spoke with Chief Kidd this morning about all these letters, and his biggest roadblock is still the fact that the federal government controls the border. And unless, I guess, he wants to start a civil war with the federal government, then we're still going to be stuck with some of the same problems, but maybe he can deter someone.
Maybe we ought to just secede.
That's not on the agenda. But the thought does come to mind. But anyway, I just want y'all to know what's going on with the governor's office and his latest and greatest stuff. So other than that, everything's great, I think. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, I hope. And we will be back here on December the 1st. And so with that, we're going to adjourn this meeting. And if you guys want to, we're going to have a workshop immediately after this. We have the city, the Castroville-Medina County Joint Airport Zoning Board here present, and we're going to talk about that. So if y'all want to, if anybody needs to leave, go ahead and leave, and then we'll start that. All right, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing regarding the Castroville-Medina County Joint Airport Zoning Board. And I'll just preface it by saying, in 1990, this court passed a joint airport zoning board resolution to create it. Castroville did the same thing in 1990. And if I miss any dates, y'all correct me. But technically, from that point forward, there is a file on it in the records. They did have a set of rules in the records. They were never approved. And here we are now, 30 years later. 30 years later, and we have appointed 2 people on that board. The city of Castroville's appointed 2 people. Medina County has 2 members. That is Darren Bond and Arnold DeLacy. I say that right? Heck. And the city of Castroville has 2 members on that board, which are Cindy Malone and Linda Gerardo, who is not here. And that board has a chair who is Eric Cherry. And so they've been working for the past year on putting together a set of rules. I've been, and I know Commissioner Sitter was there Monday night, and I've been to a couple of public hearings. And so we wanted to present it to the court today. And they've heard this from me before. My biggest issue is to not draw us into some kind of a lawsuit by being over-restricted, because at the end of the day, there's landowners on both sides of the airport, being mainly big landowners, Hugo Gutierrez and Dr. Guerra. And on the other end, down off the beaten path a little bit, is Anna Horton. And the last thing that I want to have happen is for the city of Castroville and the Medina County to get into some type of a lawsuit for damages if we get over-restricted, because they will not sue the board, they will sue us. And TML, I've got a call into TAC, but I'm 99% sure that TAC and Texas Municipal League will not protect us on something like that, because it's something we're doing on our own doing, not something where it was an accident or something like that. So with that being said, I would like to have Eric Cherry come up and tell us where we're at.
You have a copy of the map?
We have everybody has a copy of one of these, but yeah, if you got a big copy, that'd be awesome.
Aren't there some federal regulations that kind of govern the construction around airports?
Yes, and let me introduce.
If we kind of mirror those,
Let's go ahead and get the rest of the people in play here.
Thank you.
Please tell us Would your title and name, and right behind you, the gentleman from FAA and TxDOT?
I'm David Kirkpatrick. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director for Castroville and the Airport Manager. Been out there for right at 4 years, managing the airport.
Perfect.
Right behind me, I'll let Mr. Holly talk.
Jim Howley, Director of Planning and Programming for TxDOT Aviation out of Austin.
Okay. And Chuck, as if you need an introduction.
Chuck Friesen, Tri-County Consulting. I advise the city of Castroville and other airport sponsors on efficient operations of their airports.
Perfect. And I've introduced the rest of y'all, I think, except we all know the mayor. Hi, Mayor. So, go ahead.
First, obviously you got the map, okay? The first thing we had to do as board was define a jurisdictional area, okay? The jurisdictional area was defined, we've had public hearings on it, and it has been voted on and passed. So the big outline on your map is basically the jurisdictional area, okay? Inside of the jurisdictional area are what we call different zones, obviously with different restrictions. The areas that are out farther, well, let me go back and explain. When you've got an airport, okay, it's like an upside down wedding cake is what they call it, okay? So you've got a runway, and then you've got like a stadium going around. And as you further you go out, the higher up restrictions, like you were talking about federal height restrictions, go out. Further you go out, those things go higher, okay? So I should say the other way around. The closer you in,
Cones.
yeah,
Cones.
the height restrictions are more strict, closer, not as strict, farther out. So just giving you that background right there, Chuck, if you would, could you explain some of the background and stuff, just real quick to the other commissioners, of what, the whole thing was kicked off and started?
The background on partnerships. Okay. Historically, the Federal Aviation Administration has authority over the airspace throughout the United States, okay? They have the authority to regulate the airspace. They do not have authority to regulate land use. That is a local consideration. And of course, in Texas doesn't, counties typically don't, municipalities have that authority. In the case of airports, the Texas legislature in 1987 saw fit to establish the Texas Airport Zoning Act, okay? Because historically there have been very significant problems with aircraft operations in airports near built-up areas, housing areas, residential areas. Primarily, what the zoning intent is to minimize public exposure to aircraft accidents, excessive noise, and nuisance overflights, okay? In the last, I'm going to say, 2 decades, or even 3 decades, more money has been spent satisfying court judgments against airport sponsors because of noise and overflight nuisance, okay? As well as the risk from aircraft accidents occurring near an airport where there was not zoning action taken, okay, by the airport sponsor, whether it be municipal or county, to protect those areas around the airport, okay? So zoning is, airport zoning is intended to first minimize that exposure, and secondly then, to protect the airport operations from aviation safety hazards, okay? So that the airport operations can be sustained as has been intended in the case of the Castroville Airport, the Hondo Airport. Both of those airports were federally established airfields in World War II. The federal government then transferred those, in the case of Castroville to them and Hondo to Hondo, with the deed restrictions, okay, that you protect this airport for public use aviation. And so they are obliged to take action to do that. So that's why these boards were established. And it's based on the Airport Zoning Act. The state of Texas required that to be done at that time. Both Castroville and Hondo did establish obstruction hazard maps. That's the inverted wedding cake, the cone-shaped map to protect the airspace, okay? At that point, there was no action taken for land use considerations. In the interim, that has become more of a question, more of an issue. So hence, the Castroville board was repopulated to do the work that the board has done in the past year, striving to come to a balanced solution that, number one, is not retroactive on any of the land uses that are in place. Number two, that is reasonable from a legal standpoint. So reasonable needs to be minimal, needs to be based on sound logic to minimize public exposure to the accidents, the noise, and the nuisance overflights.
Question. Monday night when I was there, I apologize to y'all because I've not paid attention to what y'all been doing, okay? And one of the main reasons is it's the City of Castroville's airport, okay? And the county basically gets no benefit out of it. We other than having an airport in Castroville, we get that benefit that people get to fly in and out, and that is good for the county. But so we want to support that airport doing whatever they do and do it right. But like I said earlier, I don't want to be a part of a lawsuit that landowners will come after us on. And I read the statutes then. So Tuesday I went, sat down in my Westlaw, and I printed out all the statutes in 241. And my main question as I read them, and I visited with Maggie about it. Maggie is our house. She is our in-house attorney for the county. And the biggest question I have is these are all what we call may statutes, not shall statutes. And so I'm curious if you or maybe the gentleman from TxDOT or somebody could just tell me why do we have to do this if we've been operating without it for all these years? If it says we may do this, but we don't necessarily have to. In the legal world, may and shall are two big words.
Two big words.
So can somebody answer that for me?
If I could first point out, just when it comes to benefit, the county benefits tremendously from the 3 airports that you have.
Sure.
And to put some numbers to it, and the mayor and I have had conversations about this, but the Texas Transportation Institute in 2018, they do this about every 5 years. They do a very careful analysis of the significance of the 269 general aviation airports in the state, okay? In 2018, the Castroville Airport, the data showed that the annual contribution, economic impact, was more than $4 million. Hondo Airport, a bit over $9 million. The Divine Airport, around $3 million. That was 2018. With the growth going on, and at the Medina meeting, the 10 companies that are coming in, okay, you know, there is growing interest in aviation facilities in Medina County.
But we promote it.
There's a lot of benefit.
Go Medina promotes it. I guess I still want to know the may and shall version of why do we have to do this. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, so the aerospace side of things, part 77, that's federal law. You know, state statute can't really dictate against federal law in terms of protecting the airspace. Obviously, like Chuck said, the decision for land uses and what to allow from height to wildlife attractants to homes and all that is left to the local jurisdictions. But when that happens, although the FAA doesn't approve it, they can then start impacting the airport. So shortening runways, they can, if there's not effective zoning in place, the FAA can threaten and sometimes have taken money back or prohibit future grants, things like that. And then actually in Texas statute, TxDOT Aviation we are prohibited from paying the final portions of a grant to an airport if effective airport zoning isn't in place. So that is TxDOT may not pay that final portion of the grant if the
Are there airports in Texas that do not have this in place that y'all do hold back funding from?
So we have not actually held back funding. I don't think there's been a lot of, the statute really hasn't been followed that closely, and I think that it's not just related to this, but it is in statute, and one of the things we're looking at now is what are our statutory responsibilities, our requirements, our musts or wills, and then our mays, what can we do. We're going through our system plan right now, and one of the things we are definitely looking at when we update our system plan is looking at land use across the state, looking at land use zoning to make sure that airports have the rules in place, the zoning in place to protect them, to protect the historical investment. Because we've spent, or us and the federal government have spent millions of dollars on Castroville, millions of dollars on Hondo over the course of that we've been involved since '93.
Sure.
We took over federal jurisdiction.
But wouldn't the federal regulations supersede anything we do here?
In terms of the Part 77 services?
Whatever that is, yeah. But I mean, we're talking, when it comes to airports, what I'm thinking of in my limited capabilities is height restrictions. And that would seem to me like one of the main things that's covered under the federal version.
Yeah, height's the big one. Part 77 of federal regulations covers, they actually call them imaginary surfaces. Those are the real names. But they are, like he was describing, the stadium or the upside down wedding cake, where you have surfaces that come off from the sides of the runway, the ends of the runway, that circle around the runway. And if those are penetrated, the FAA conducts a study on the impacts to navigable airspace. And then based on the results of that, if there's a penetration to some of these protected surfaces, they could say, oh, the penetration isn't that bad. Put a light on it or paint it orange. Or sometimes it's bad enough where they say, oh, we're gonna shorten your runway, or you need to close if it's bad enough. So depending on how bad the impact in the airspace is, kind of determines how far the FAA goes in terms of penalizing the airport, for lack of a better term. And then what then they instantly do is look at, did the sponsor of the airport have the proper regulations in place to prevent that thing from happening? And
What type of regulations are we looking at?
These land use things, these zoning, protective zoning.
Maggie, you just got a question.
I had a follow-up question to Judge Schuchart in terms of whether it's a may or a must. Other than the grant money, which I understand what you're saying, if it's truly required, why do we not have similar land regulation proposals with the Hondo Airport and the Denali Airport? Why is it just Castroville?
No, so we're doing this, it's actually now a requirement for us. So anytime an airport goes through a planning study, there's 3 levels of plan. It's a full-blown master plan, an airport layout plan with narrative, and then just updating an airport layout plan, which for simple terms is just a map. It's just a picture of the airport, current and proposed development. We are, every single time we fund one of those, and we have nearly 300 airports in our system, that is a requirement.
I'm not talking about the grant part, I'm talking about the zoning board and the proposed land use regulations. Why is it just, if it's truly required, why does Hondo and Divine not have a similar board and regulations?
So if I could just back up to your question in conjunction, because the two are related. So, as I stated previously, the federal government has authority to regulate airspace, okay? And even in that case, they are, they're not as likely to try to direct somebody to do something as assure aviation safety by drawing back and limiting the capacity, the capability of the airport. Right now, the Castroville Airport has trees that penetrate the approach surface on the north end of the runway. As a result, FAA did a flight check, and for a couple of years now, pilots are not authorized to land at night out of that approach procedure because those trees penetrate the airspace surface, okay? So the FAA didn't come down and, direct this or direct that necessarily. It's a situation where you are expected to protect your airport, all right, and take the steps to do that. So the may and the shall Yeah, the state is not in a position to say, you will do this, because in Texas, we believe in landowner rights and those sorts of things, all right? But there is ample incentive for airport sponsors to protect the taxpayer investment over the years in those facilities, as well as the benefit that's there that I mentioned, and the benefit out into the future. So in this case, I don't know, you would agree, Jim, neither Texas nor the FAA are in a position to direct you and say, you shall do this. No, it's more of a situation, well, when it comes to spending scarce dollars to maintain, repair, and improve airports, it's going to go to the places that are doing a good job of protecting their airports, okay? So the Castroville Airport, I'm sad to say, for 16 years, the Castroville Airport did not receive any money for repair, maintenance, or upgrade, because they had taken some steps to not protect their airport for future use. It took 16 years to recover from that. So this, what we're looking at right here, is intended to be a mutual local solution that accomplishes the protection of the airport as well as the local land owners and the uses around the airport. That's ideal. That's what I think you strive for.
Judge, if I may, I think what you asked Ms. Maggie, I'm in, the Castroville Airport is in a master plan update right now, which means we're required, their review of text doc, make sure that we do have this board in place. As Divine and Hondo go through their master planning efforts, which are generally about every 10 years, when they request that money from TxDOT is immediately going to look at why they do or do not have a board, and if they do not have a board established, they will not fund.
So it's just basically grant-based versus truly required.
There's more to that. Yeah, so then come ask me what happens if you don't.
No, go ahead, somebody, go ahead, Darren.
I'm Darren Bond, I'm a part of this board, we've been working for this for over a year. Just in full disclosure, I've known the judge forever, and I have ultimate respect for you, I really do, even though you went to that university. But getting back to your original points in question, one is you're right, this board has been in place for over a year, and we've had very little input from outside. We've had a few landowners come by, a few public visits occasionally. The city of Castroville has been wonderfully generous with our consultants. We've had Chuck and David and what's his name, Bryce. So we've had legal consultation. We've had consultation from very experienced FAA representatives and David. So it has been, we have had resources, but we haven't had much visitors. I wish you would have come before, I really do, but we've been working on this for a long time. Your other point there, Judge, was about liability. I don't want to be sued. I don't want the city to be sued. You know my heart. The health of Castroville and the overall community is where my heart is. I'm pro-airport just like I'm pro-regional park, and I'm pro-landmark inn, and I'm pro-tourism, that kind of stuff, whatever helps the community overall. I don't want the city to be sued, but you know, and you know too, you can sue anybody for anything. While on the city council in Castroville, I was sued twice. Remember those days back then? So you can sue anybody for anything, and it doesn't matter if there's been a right or a wrong infraction. That's what the courts are designed to lay out, is the rights and wrongs. So regardless of what we produce, we're not going to satisfy everybody. There's no way to satisfy every developer. There's no way to satisfy every landowner. We're just not going to, that's impossible. So there will be some unhappy people out there. But what I suggest, Judge, and I'm not a lawyer, but I don't consider that a negative, yes, there is liability for lawsuit on that side. A landowner, a developer, Ms. Ward, somebody might sue. And which entity does she sue? I don't know. It's a state law. It's a state zoning. We are commissioned by the state, not the county or the city. So is the city liable? Is the state? I don't know. That's a legal question, but you are likely to get sued. What you didn't mention, Judge, is there's liability on the other side. We have done nothing since 1987. Nothing has been put in place since 1987. There's a liability associated with that. And I can think of several examples, but I'll just give one. Let's say there's a high-density activity at the end of the runway. Yeah, it could be a Walmart or, who knows, a big apartment building or something like that, and there's a tragedy. There's an aircraft accident that causes multiple deaths and that sort of stuff. We're gonna be questioned, why is that apartment complex at the end of the runway? Did you have anything in place to prevent that from happening? Did you do your due diligence? And we're required to, Chuck said it himself, it's no longer an option, we're required to put something in place, because when something like that happens, we're gonna be questioned on it. And the other part of the liability is we want all of our airports to be successful, financially successful. You have tons of corporate activity out here at Hondo. It's wonderful. Very little risk out there, but you better put something in place. Because let's say that corporate activity starts to get restricted, and Mr. TxDOT can tell you this, as encroachments start to occur, and restrictions prevent commercial activity on the airport that should otherwise happen. Let's say we have an obstacle that takes away our ability to fly in low weather or something like that. Your commercial activity is going to be hurt. And they're going to say, wait a minute, why did you allow this at the end of the runway? Did you have anything to place? Did you do your due diligence? Were you responsible? So I'll tell you, Judge, when we got together a year ago, we wanted to be the least, have the least impact on landowners that we could and still be responsible for compatible land use. Does that make sense?
It does, and so and we don't have to go through every one of these regulations. I just want them to know A, B, and C and what's going on. What I would ask y'all to do, and I know, and I thank you for serving. I appreciate everything y'all are doing. Serving on this board, you don't get paid much, and you certainly are going through plenty of trouble. But I would ask y'all, before you pass this set of rules, please sit down with the people that are most affected, which is immediately to your east side and immediately to your west side, because Mr. Gutierrez, I understand, has got his land under contract, and I believe it's under contract for well over $10 million. I don't know the number, but let's just say it's $2 million. And let's say that y'all put these things in place, and that buyer says, I'm not buying this if I can't do what I want to do with it, okay? So who's Mr. Gutierrez going to go after? So he's going to go after us because he's lost a sale, because we are presiding over you guys as the board, and y'all put something together. And so I'm only asking that you make sure that you've got Mr. Gutierrez on one side and Dr. Garrow on the other side. Make sure that they sit with you before you pass anything, because you will immediately, we will draw a lawsuit. I was sitting next to Mr. Gutierrez's realtor on Monday, and I can promise you that's going to happen. And I want to do everything we can to avoid that. And the only way you can avoid it is he's got to have a place at the table and say, I can live with that. Because then his sale can go through. Whoever buys it subject to the knowledge that y'all's stuff's in place. Dr. Garrow on the other side, same thing. And so I have, as I said, I used to do condemnation law. I always represented the landowner. I would not represent the condemnor, because the condemnor always loses, okay? Whenever you restrict somebody's property, you will lose if you're the condemnor, in this case, the board with restrictions. And so I recognize the other end of that lawsuit is, if we have nothing in place and we have an accident, then we may be liable there too. I realize that, but the immediate goal for me is for y'all to make sure those people right here on this map that are most affected. I've been told the Alsatian Oaks is grandfathered because they already had their plans in place, and that's good, because Mr. Collins was sitting there the other night with 2 lawyers, and I just know that this county does not want to be a part of a lawsuit, and that I would say we'll be on the losing end of.
I understand what you're saying, and a couple of points. One, We've been doing this for over a year.
I understand.
And where have they been up to this point? You know, where have they been? Where have y'all been? You know, and I will give great credit to the city because the city has just recently stepped up with some inputs, other than your consultants, which have been there the whole time, but where has everybody been? The other thing is, I'm not threatened by developers. I'm not threatened by lawsuits. And Judge, I think you ought to open your scope a little bit bigger. It's not just the developers that we're trying to satisfy here, it's the overall community. What happens to Castroville, for instance, if we lose that flavor that is Castroville? The mayor and I have had wonderful conversations about it. The only thing that sets Castroville different from any other city around San Antonio is its historical nature and its historical character, its culture. You know, Castroville has aviation in its blood back to 1927. So if you don't plan now to avoid unnecessary encroachment on the airport operations, success of the airport, you're going to lose some of that. I've even heard that there are people, and I've heard this for years now, they would like to plow that whole place up and plant stuff. Like to plow the whole thing up and put an HEB, or commercial activity there. One, you can't because of the agreements made back in 1955. And two, is that really going to help Castroville, you know, succeed and be, you know, the city that it is in the future? So I'm not threatened by developers and threats of lawsuits. I've been sued before. When
But the problem is, Darren, you're not gonna be sued. We will be sued. That's the problem, and I just want to avoid that. I want to do everything we
understand that, but I
can.
don't think so. This is not a county function. Our authorization comes from the state. This law is a state law, and in fact, it really is independent of anything you do as a county or anything that Castroville does. You know, Castroville should be passing a complementary ordinance to go along with this. They don't have to. It's a state law that we're about to put in place. And I'm getting very nervous here because of all the pressure. I'm wondering what's going on. Is there something cooking under this that wants this to be delayed some amount of time? I don't know. But I do know right now, Judge, that there's nothing in place to help protect us from the encroachment that'll hurt everybody, not just the airport. So we've been at this for a year, and yeah, I'm not saying anything's going to be perfect. This board doesn't dissolve. We can always reconvene. We can meet and say, oh, we made a mistake here, or we can make this better. I've talked to you and the mayor about changing the variance board to a different group of people that might be more appropriate. I'm willing to do that, but if we just sit for week after week after week and do nothing, I think we're not being responsible with what our
I'm not asking to delay it any longer than I want Hugo Gutierrez and Dr. Guerra and Anna Wharton and those people that are most threatened by what you're doing. I want them at the table. And yes, if they don't want to come to the table, at least we make a formal invitation for them to come. But please don't take any action until we know that those immediate threats are resolved. That's my question.
We've got a meeting set for tonight.
I know.
So if they want to come, they can come to the meeting
Can
tonight.
you?
I mean, I don't have a
We
problem.
talked the other night. We talked the other
But there's a
night.
meeting on Monday, okay?
They were there.
That there's a meeting tonight.
I know. But you know, they heard what we had to say.
Yeah.
Okay, and while I wasn't speaking for them, I was speaking for the county, but I was speaking for them at the same time because I don't want them to be affected, all right? And they were sitting at that meeting, so I need y'all to make sure that, yeah, the state of Texas is not gonna get sued, Darren. Medina County and the city of Castroville will be the defendants in this lawsuit. If somebody's affected negatively, okay, and I'm just asking y'all to take the time to make sure that those people, I'll pick up the phone when we walk out of here and set up a meeting with you and Hugo Gutierrez, okay? Because I want to make certain that Hugo is not going to be negatively affected because I know that he's got land under contract right now for whatever millions of dollars it is. And if y'all pass something that causes him to lose that deal, that in the court of law, that's a damage. Am I correct? he's immediately damaged. I got more lawyers here than me, so
What-
I'll always let them
What I enjoy,
speak for me.
having been on city council and sitting on other zoning boards, when I hear about citizens suing the city
Yeah.
or residents of the county suing the county, I always go back to, you're suing yourself. Because who's gonna pay the damages of these lawsuits? The city that you live in or the county that you reside in is the one who's gonna pay it, and ultimately you're suing yourself.
But Hugo doesn't live in Castroville, and he doesn't live in Medina County. He is a landowner that will be negatively affected.
That land is in Medina County is going to be, again, involved, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just, it's the parity that I see. The other thing that you look at too is, if you don't have anything, okay, and here's something to consider, is, and there isn't anything, somebody drops one in a Walmart during the Christmas Black Friday shopping holiday, right? And you did nothing, okay? State's been there, said, hey, you gotta do something. Feds have been there, said, hey, you gotta do something. You're gonna have a Thomas J. Henry billboard outside your courthouse. Okay?
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, bring them to your table before you pass something. I know you got an action item on there tonight, and I'd ask you not to take action until we have approval, or at least some affirmation from Hugo and Gara and those people, because yes, they're late coming to the table, all right? Darren admitted the other day, y'all been doing this with zero budget, and I'm sorry about that. And I will tell you that if you need the county to do the mailing for you, this young lady over here is very good at it, okay?
She just got volunteered.
Sorry.
Sorry.
But she does it all the time, and she can do a mail out to everybody that lives within 5,000 feet if you want to. You just tell us who to get there. But the main ones I'm worried about, because Will is unaffected, because as y'all said, he's grandfathered. Well, that's really great for him, but it's too bad those other guys didn't have something in paper already that they could be grandfathered, because they will be affected. And I just want to make sure that and I'm going to ask y'all to not pass anything tonight until, and I'll call, as soon as we hang up here, I will call Hugo.
Well,
Because
and I
I will
appreciate that.
make certain that
Let's
he's,
have the meeting.
I'll
I'm free
do
this
that.
afternoon.
In all this discussion that we've had so far, I don't know how long it's been, but I've listened to two
40
problems.
minutes.
One of them involves encroachment into airspace, trees, and the possibility of an apartment complex going on here. That's the only two things that I've gathered as far as problems. And the only thing that I've heard as far as a possible solution is the inclusion of these two landowners that we're talking about. And, you know, I don't know, this is the first I've heard about all this. Being from Divine, I have no knowledge of your meetings and the results of them. But I've only heard two potential problems and one potential solution.
Well, just to give you some ideas, height is, of course, the big one. Obviously, airplanes fly in the air.
And
right?
isn't that
The other
covered
thing
by
is
federal
light.
regulations?
Is light.
If you go to page 6 and 7, you can see all what they can
At
change.
the end of,
Page 6 and
in
7.
New Braunfels, at the end of the runway, they had the vision to put up an outdoor theater on the approach to a runway. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, okay? But you know what? That's just like stupid. You know, why would you put up an outdoor theater on the approach to a runway?
now has FAA, have you slapped New Braunfels around for doing that?
They removed it.
Question.
That was years past.
Say that again? Oh, I'm sorry, either one of y'all, yeah.
But on the other hand, in the case of Castroville, the ball fields at the end of the runway for more than 50 years, the FAA has tried diligently to get some action there to remove that hazard, and it hasn't, no action's been taken yet, but there's gonna need to be something soon, because that's an accident waiting to happen. There have been 2 aircraft that have come off the runway. Fortunately, they were both to the west side of the runway, not to the east side where the ball fields were. If they had gone into those ball fields, you know,
Sure.
talk about lawsuits.
But just to answer your question, height is important, light is important, because, you know, especially when they're landing at night. your population densities, I mean, you know, you don't want to build a mega church at the end of the runway. Sure, they're only there maybe 2 nights a week, but again, you've got a lot of people in one area that could be a potential problem. You've got water, okay? And what I can't understand is it's built, I've landed in Orlando, and it's built in the middle of the swamp. You fly in and there's all these birds out there. But bird strikes, especially for light aircraft, is devastating. Of course, we saw the effects of what happened to bird strikes when they hit a commercial airliner in New York, and he fortunately landed it in the river.
What is the responsibility of the county commissioners court to regulate these?
It's part of the county. This board is part county, part city, and again, we're tasked with putting together common sense ordinances that prevent,
That's for
you
the
know,
common
yeah,
sense.
theaters at the end of a runway. To do common sense, just, land use, okay? The appropriate land use around an area, okay? And appropriate is important. Logical is very important. But when it comes to millions of dollars and the almighty American buck, logic and appropriate, and in many cases goes out the window.
When I'm sitting here, and again, when it comes to things like that, airport regulations, I'm a hell of a tree trimmer. But what does the city of San Antonio do? I mean, they have millions of people within.
How many billions have they paid?
You don't want to get into their problems.
Of course, they're a commercial airport.
Well,
Okay, and
They have lost their son's money.
Well,
Go ahead, you and then Maggie, okay?
Yeah, I think Chuck mentioned it earlier that, airports across the country have spent billions, over the last 30, 40 years, purchasing homes, insulating, things like that, and some major airports have closed. I mean, Denver, they had to move their commercial service airport, and whatever that was, 20, 30 years ago, and people complained that it was too far away, because they tried to get it away from everybody, and now they're surrounded and having noise complaints. They built it in the middle of absolutely nowhere. My first job in aviation, I worked at a commercial service airport that was only 10 years old, 15 years old, because our original commercial service airport got encroached on from residences and roads and, just decades of improper zoning. We had to spend tens of millions, if not $100 million moving the airport. So that, San Antonio, you look at what their zoning looks like, I mean, they inevitably have paid a ton of money out to the residences and businesses. We have general aviation airports that have paid out, to purchase businesses because they're in incompatible zones, residences, things like that. We actually have an airport right now. I'm not going to, say the name of the airport, but they are currently being investigated by FAA headquarters for allowing residential use right next to the airport, and they didn't protect the airport. And the FAA said, well, you signed the contract with us that said you would protect the airport. Now we're coming for you, and they're absolutely doing it.
Or is Castroville gonna be punished because they allowed Walmart and Will Collins to go ahead and proceed forward? Will that airport be punished by the FAA because all those houses, I mean, what did 800 or 900 houses?
Because we've had nothing in place to prevent that.
I know,
Very well
I know.
done. Yes.
I'm just saying, 5 years from now, are they gonna come back and come down on the airport because you got all those houses there?
Well, so I think he explained, we're really looking at the future.
I understand.
That's a huge.
Statute very clearly states you cannot retro. Everything's forward,
Correct.
so.
And we want to make sure that future development is compatible with the airport.
Sure.
That future, whether it's tall structures or wildlife attractants or light and power interference or whatever it might be, that those are kept at bay to protect the airport. There's 20,000 airports across the country. There's a lot of water under a lot of bridges when it comes to incompatible land uses. And we do not have money, the time, or the desire to go try to fix the past, but we can focus on the future. That's really what we've been focusing on across the state, all of our airports is, there's a lot of stuff that exists already that's not fixable, but let's prevent future problems. Let's not add to the issue, let's not compound.
I would think that the first step in rectifying the problem is having these two gentlemen, Judge Schuchart mentioned, at this initial meeting where you're going to formulate these plans and restrictions, things of that nature. That would be the first positive step in fixing the problem.
Let me let Maggie's she's been having her hand up here, so go
So
ahead.
in follow-up to what Judge Schuchart was talking about earlier about it not being retroactive, and so even if you pass the regulations, it's not gonna change the fact that there's a ball field there, for example. But my question is, I'd like y'all to speak to enforcement moving forward. I believe the code speaks of creation of an agency. How is that gonna work?
That's up to the city and the county. Yeah, it's up to the city and the county. We don't have an enforcement, and we don't have a budget to go out and do code enforcement, as the zoning board.
So y'all are wanting to pass regulations with really no,
There's
nothing in place
okay, it's
to.
up to,
It's
up to the city. Okay, once those regulations are put in place, okay, and the city and county takes no action. They don't want to. They're not willing or able to enforce it. Those regulations are on. Okay? And airplane lands.
We should try to avoid it.
Okay? What's the number 4? I think, because now
Walmart's a
you've got it
retroactive,
in
Walmart's
negligence.
already existing.
That's right, but now you've got it in negligence.
Now,
Okay?
on your question of
Didn't do
enforcement,
anything.
we discussed this over the last 12 months ad infinitum, and the big part, like you mentioned, Judge, is we have zero budget. If we had a budget, we'd hire a code enforcement office agency that would be in charge of that, and your liability would be gone. You know, it would be code enforcement, the state law, that's where the developers would go. We have zero budget. The law itself, the one that we're working under, the authorization we're working under, authorizes us to designate an enforcement agency. We looked at that. Who has that? You know, you don't have one. You don't have a code enforcement agency built. The city has in place a structure for code enforcement. The only thing we could come up with that it made any sense at all was the airport advisory board. That's not fair. That's a group of volunteers there too. You know, it's not fair. You know, the board of variance, that is a very strong responsibility, and it's legal action that they're doing. That's not fair to put it on a group of volunteers, but what else did we have? We didn't have anything else, but that's what's in the draft right now. Some other ideas have been presented to me. The mayor presented an idea where yourself, the commissioner, the airport manager, and others were involved in a board of variance. I can support that. I'm not sure if that's legal though. It seems like there might be some conflict of interest going on there. If we have some other people step up and volunteer, that's fine, but that is a dilemma. We were not given the budget for an enforcement agency. We were just given the authority to appoint one.
I guess my concern is it premature to enforce, you know, to go ahead and put regulations in place with no future planning of exactly.
I would say yes, other than that, this mandate's been in place since 1987. We haven't had.
That's
I-
It's about arriving at a standard at this point, which is what it's working on for nearly.
So Chuck,
And there's follow-on work. That's.
Chuck, I guess David, right? What's your first?
I'm Jim.
David, Jim, sorry, Jim, David. All right. Divine and Hunter are gonna have to do this too, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
So it may behoove this court to step up, because we're gonna have to be supporting 2 other airports.
I got a good plan.
And you know, if there's something we can do to facilitate what you need to do, this court is in a position that we probably could pass funding to help get it done, if that would help.
If you provide us a solution for that variance board, I'm all for it. Just give me some names or give me some positions.
Because we're gonna need to do this for three airports, and we do value our airports. I mean, all 3 of them are valuable to us. They're a benefit to this county, and so it may be beneficial for us to do
And
something.
the people affected most should have a say in that board, and I'll support that all day long.
Okay.
There's a timing factor here. I mean, right now the pressure is on the Castroville Airport.
Right.
And soon to come probably the Hondo Airport, and the line is probably a ways away.
But would it make more sense to delay this enough so that we could have standard regulations among all three airports, so it's not one thing here, one thing there, but some maybe kind of scaled back, reasonable ones that would be applicable.
And that's what I'm thinking, if we were to, the county were to step up and do something to assist this group, we could assist the next group with what we've already done with this group.
To answer your question, I'd like to respond to that, and Jim, please jump in as well. So
Wait,
it's really
wait,
up
wait,
to-
wait, one person at a time.
It's up to the airport sponsor, okay? Right? Always the sponsor. Castroville, the city of Castroville is the sponsor, responsible for that airport. Hondo is the Hondo Airport, Divine for the Divine Airport. Medina County. Some counties are sponsors for airports, but in this case, it's the cities.
I'm just saying, Chuck, that this commissioner's court is in a position to assist. We have money, and I would just soon put money up front to get it done right, and everybody happy, to assist y'all in getting it done right, because we're gonna be doing it again in Hondo and Divine, and so I'd just as soon, and yes, Beck and I are gonna be gone in 43 days, but we can pretty simply set aside a budget to help you guys, right, Edward?
Yeah.
I got. Edward's my budget hawk, but we can find some money to assist getting this done and assist you guys, because the burden's been on you, the board, and I'm sorry for that, and I'm sorry we're late to come, but the last 2 meetings that I've been to, my lawyer hat just comes on and freaking grows as I'm watching what's happening, and I would just as soon us do what y'all need us to do to help you. We will help fund it and get it done right so that my lawyer hat goes away. Okay? Can we do that?
Sure. I appreciate it very much.
Okay.
But just to answer your question, the draft that we propose now, we didn't just, pull stuff out of the air and say, oh, that sounds good. We had consultants with the FAA. We had other airports that have done zoning regulations for other airports. We had input from the city. We had input from the FAA. We had input from the states. We've had people from aviation. And, just myself, I'm just, the average ordinary guy. So what we did was we took pieces from all of this, okay, to put it into a common sense draft. Like I said, now what's the idea of the roads? So in that draft proposal, like you're saying, Divine and Hondo, okay, it's a grid plan. Okay, sure, it can be tweaked individually for each of those various airports.
It's their local choice.
Yeah, it's their choice. Hondo has a much longer run of airports.
I'm just saying, in terms of efficiency, it may make sense in terms of not reinventing the wheel. You're saying there's timing issues, but there are things like the advisory circle that have kind of some maybe less restrictive, language to start in terms of getting this something in place, and seeing how it goes, and then revising as needed.
Okay, Darren?
I'm hearing some new things here, and Judge, you know me well, I try to keep an open mind on things, but for a year we've been working on this, and my tendency, or my inclination is to get something on the books, we can reconvene and we can fix it. One, I think I can speak for the board, you tell me, Eric, yes, we will take your money, thank you very much.
Yes, we will take your money.
I want that. But if we were to implement some sort of delay, what we've been working on for 12 months, the only way I personally, as a member, would even consider that is if we put a calendar limitation on that. So we have lots of interest now. I love that interest. I welcome it. That's great. But where have y'all been for 12 months? In fact, the city wrote kind of I wouldn't call it a rebuttal, but their draft. I've had a chance to read it. I haven't had a chance to study. They put effort in. I appreciate all of that. Even that advisory circle, I saw that on our public hearing. Somebody found that and failed to share it with our board. I know what advisory circles are. I didn't know that there was one that addressed this sort of thing. Whoever found it should have brought it to the board so we could consider it. So I'm open to hearing more things. I'm open to your input, the developers' input, and that sort of stuff. But 1987, and we've been working on it for 12 months, so you give me a date. We will be finished on this date, and if you can do that.
I'm gonna call Hugo when we walk out of here. Like I said, I will call him. I have him in my cell number, and I will call him, and you'll call Dr. Guerra, and
He'll be there tonight.
I want,
If we could work this out within a couple weeks and pass a zoning ordinance, it makes sense.
as fast as they can get down with y'all, then I just ask that you don't do it tonight so they can sit down with y'all and have time to make sure, because they're the ones. So let me just tell you what happens if you pass it tonight in its current format, and it doesn't meet with what Hugo's buyers want to do with that property. That buyer is going to get out of that contract. And I want to avoid that. That's why I want to make sure whoever it is that's buying from Hugo, he's the most, and I keep bringing him up because he's the one that we're at the most risk with. Because he has a huge contract sitting there that y'all passing something tonight, that buyer can say, I'll go somewhere else. And I want to avoid that.
The scope needs to be the overall community, overall county, not just one developer and his.
Understand, but that one person is right next to the airport, and the rest of the county, I'm unaffected by it in Medina, Texas, okay? I don't have, and you ask why we're late to the show, it's because the city owns that airport, not the county. The city has been working with y'all trying to protect the city's rights, and I've heard, I think, Mayor Schroeder, we got two Darrens. I think Mayor Schroeder and I are on the same page, are we not?
Absolutely.
On everything, and so I know what he's been telling y'all, and I have been in conversations with him. I just haven't been in conversations with y'all, but he and I have been on the same page day one, and that is, so I think, you know, I think he would probably echo what I just told you. Am I correct?
Well,
For the most part? But
I totally agree. I think that making a decision tonight, passing something tonight, is a terrible mistake, puts us at risk. And I say this from the standpoint of somebody who loves that airport, not just personally. Personally, I think it's really amazing, but in terms of benefit to the city, it is a tremendous benefit to the city. So we do need to protect it. But this is not the right way. By protecting the airport, we're putting everybody else at risk. And
this is not at all, you know my scope of this.
No, I know where your heart is. I know that you value the community. You're not solely focused on this, but you say that the city hasn't given you direction for this entire year. That is to be only as restricted as we need to be, absolutely as restricted as we need to be to protect the interest of the airport, but only that. And the things that have been put into here, I've said this before, if TxDOT doesn't say we're going to limit the amount of traffic that goes down right in front of the airport, if they don't limit the amount of traffic that goes down the closest thing to that, which is Highway 90, then I don't see how we can justify making that same. So some of the other restrictions, the light restrictions, the height restrictions, those things that are very obvious, I totally agree with. Airstrike, you get less airstrike out of a pond than you do out of a cornfield. I've been in that cornfield when it was on fire with dove. So all of these things, you're saying anecdotally a lot of stuff. What we're talking about is legally. Legally, you're putting us at risk if you make decisions tonight before this is fully thought out. And not to put aside all of the hard work, pain and suffering we've gone through to do this, but I've been right there with you, and this is the city's will, and it's the county's will.
And not doing things appropriately makes you negligent. So if you have to balance negligence against, we want minimal restrictions.
TxDOT is negligent. You're not limiting the amount of traffic that goes.
I'm a poor farm boy that lives 10 miles from here, okay? What TxDOT does on Highway 90 with cars is totally out of my purview. Different division. Yeah, it's a different division. What is in my purview, okay, what I just have to do is putting together common sense restrictions within the jurisdictional area, which is already been passed. For the airport. And we can agree to this. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the thing is, we're not going to know it, because in my lifetime, by the time things are built up and things happen, I'll be dead. okay? You know, so, like I said, I come from this where I really don't have skin in the game. I mean, whether 10,000 developers build right up against the airport, it doesn't affect me day one, okay? But it does my friends, my families, people that enjoy in that community, it is gonna affect them. And so, that's the perspective I come at it from. I don't have skin in the game.
Judge, I think I have a pivotal vote tonight, and I've heard new things here I hadn't heard before. And I will give you a commitment, if you can give me a time frame, one where we're not pushing this off for a month or 2 months, where we can all get together and come up with something that is reasonable. Not everybody's gonna be satisfied, but just to push it off and.
The timeframe's gotta be reasonable because we have Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays coming up and those are difficult to deal through, but, you know, I would say January 31, that way you can get it, we can get those people together and give them time to get something together. So that would be my time frame to you, and I will.
Let me discuss that with other board members, but, you know, like I said, I'd rather put something in place and then reconvene and redo it, but if we need to push it off and it can be a reasonable time,
I'd ask you to push it off until at least January 31. I don't even know what day that is, but it sounds like a good day to me. Okay?
It's my mother's birthday.
Oh, really? Well, then I'll send her a card.
It's a Tuesday.
Okay. Arnie,
Kind of listening to all this and the other guys using the Castroville and being actually the newest member of the board.
Well, like I said.
wait, Arnie's talking.
There's a commitment, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, whatever, the funding and the comment that you made about kind of a template of the other two airports potential whenever they get around to doing this. It would make a little bit more sense to me to, yes, not redo the whole plan, but look at a few things that have been brought up in all the last 2 or 3 meetings. The land issues primarily.
Yeah.
And then set a date, and if the county is willing to do something with helping support it financially, whatever is required to do what we're talking about, it probably makes sense just to delay it. And I know from not personally talking to the 2 landowners on the sides or others around there, some of the same questions that have been brought up here, brought up last, whenever it was Monday night, probably brought up again tonight at this other meeting.
Well, let me ask you this, do you need to have that meeting tonight?
Yeah, have a meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
But it
Wait, Arnie, go ahead, I'm sorry to
It could
interrupt.
also be changed from discuss and possible action to discuss, like happens in all kinds of other meetings.
Sure.
So it just be kind of figure out what is best, even though it's late for people coming to the table, to kind of give it one real quick review and then meeting 30 days or 60, whatever it would be, and then make a decision. Then
Okay.
people live with it, and yes, what Darren has said to others is you go back and you fix or deal with issues on a one-by-one basis and just not off person.
Okay, thank you. Larry, you understand?
Yeah, I got something short here. Evidently, are we talking now the original rules y'all put in place or the ones revised by the city we're talking about? There's a big difference here.
We gotta say, all of these comments have to be taken, the board has to evaluate them. They need to make red line edits to their draft.
Because there's a world of difference between the two sets of
Yes, sir. And
regulations.
that's what the discussion part of this evening's meeting is for. So tonight's discussion part, the board will need to take into account all comments that have been issued from all public meetings.
I'm talking about the one from the city, the draft the city had, and the draft that y'all had.
Correct. And then once that is done, they will work, the board will then work with Mr. Bryce Cox again, who has been the city planner that the city has allowed us to use while drafting this. Take all of those red line document items, give it to him and put it in what would be considered a draft for approval. So all of this-
That's reasonable. And I have put myself in the landlord position because I have valuable holdings in Medina County. Any type of restrictions makes a world of difference. Any type. And I'm kind of like Chris. If one of these was stepped on in my property, I would be sitting there with a lawyer I just got out of a 3-year lawsuit costing $400,000. I had 31 pleas against me. I won every single one. It cost me $400,000 over 3 years. I don't like lawsuits. The next one is we can make this thing as least restrictive as possible. Number 2, set up a board of adjustments as soon as we can. So these people that are going out, these landowners, if I was coming to y'all and I had 5 airline pilots sitting there, you're not gonna win on these board of adjustments. My recommendation, have 2 county officials. Since this is gonna be a county joint venture, hopefully, we have plenty of joint ventures in the county. Have 2 city officials, have 1 airport manager, because positions change in the county a lot. This board up here changes a lot. City council changes a lot. Airport has changed a lot. You'll have 1 of them and then 1 legal secretary. I think she's sitting right over there. That is my recommendation for an advisory board. The next, that all landowners abiding, and this was asked from me the other night by 2 of the landowners that are abiding to that. They were pretty good with the city's rules and regulations. All they were asking for, if they're in the 1A that's next to the taxiway, that they would be giving, if they could have the taxiway brought to their property, and then from there, they would like to put up airport hangars themselves, or put up something, fly in, having to do with the airport.
They want to pay for it.
That's way beyond what the board's looking at.
That's what they're asking for.
But it's possible.
Is that possible?
It's possible out into the future, but it really doesn't depend on.
And this one man owns 325 acres, the whole east side of the airport.
Is it possible? Yes, but that's called a through the fence operation, the through the fence access. And you have to charge for access to the airport through that fence. You have to charge the exact same amount that people on the airport are charging. So if
There's a lot of stipulations there.
That was one question.
Yeah.
Each individual the other night, I could look.
But if the landowner's okay with
And you know the landowner I'm talking about.
In fact,
As long as they comply with all the rules of FAA, then they're fine with it, just putting it in. The cost is no problem. My next one, please meet with all the landowners adjoining at least 1A and 1B1. Everybody says everybody had known about this. I didn't know about this thing was even happening until he called me and wanted to have a meeting. That was 10 days ago Monday. I went through my calendar through the year this last week. I have approximately 20 meetings a week, some 2 and 3 times a day. I never knew y'all had a meeting until Chuck called me and wants to sit down and talk about these meetings here.
You and I talked about it a year or so ago when these folks.
Me and you sitting in his office, this is going on, the first time I never heard about a meeting, huh, Chuck? Or I'd have been there. I go to a lot of meetings. I had a lot of meetings.
It's been in the paper.
There's a whole lot of weeks I don't even want to read the paper. I'm sorry. But I think anybody that would have been on the board would have been called, say, hey, you got a board meeting coming up, the county board meeting coming up. I'm just saying, should I have to read that in the paper every Thursday? The next thing, on the fine that they want to charge people, $2,000 a day because you've done something wrong. Who's going to collect that money? Who's going to charge? Who by law can say, okay, I'm going to have a rule over here. If you come down this road too fast, $5,000. Who gives y'all authority to charge that? Where'd that come from? As of 2 weeks ago, we just appointed Arnie on the board. He's just brand new on the board. He hasn't had no say in this.
Had a representative on the board for a year.
Your
representatives, and if I may ask.
We just put him on the board last week.
He was
I'm the one that done it.
replacing someone else.
Right.
He's on.
Okay, how
We
come
understand
your
that, and
representatives
I understand
did
that.
not inform you of the meetings? They're your representatives and they're on the board.
His predecessor has been on the board here.
You're giving me a headache.
Okay, all
I'm
right.
on board.
Can we agree that we will hold off till January 31, and we will reach out to these landowners and make sure they are on board with y'all?
I will agree that we will meet with the landowners and we will, as soon as practicable, convene and put together
Okay.
a new.
I think
Whether
that's
it's
reasonable.
January 31st or December 15th, whatever that may be.
Like I said, I will call them when we walk out of here. We'll be on the phones, all right?
My phone's always on.
I just want y'all to make sure we have those immediate people on board. And it sounds like, from what Larry just said, he's talked to them, we're not that far apart.
No.
But let's just avoid a collision if we can.
Sure.
Okay?
I talked to one of them some the other night.
Good. And that's, we're probably pretty close, but I didn't like what I was hearing sitting in the crowd, okay? And it worries me, and I just want to avoid having to have something going in that courtroom up there, because that's not where we want to be.
Right. Judge, just say one last thing.
Absolutely.
You know I respect you, and we're trying to have open dialogue and stuff here, and I'm trying to have a reasonable discussion with you, and I think you realize I'm open. I'm not impressed by a threatening attitude. You didn't appoint me to this board to serve developers. You appointed me to this board to serve the overall community. So developers' interests are part of that, but so is the man that owns the house in Castroville that makes $100,000 a year or less. He's just as important.
Yeah.
So threats of lawsuits, threats of other stuff, it doesn't impress me. And I'm trying to have a reasonable dialogue and be open-minded. And I just ask the same from your entire force, that's all.
Sure. Okay. Anybody else? Again, thank y'all for serving on this board. Ms. Malone, did you want to say anything, or are you just happy soaking it all in?
Well, I have revisions that I want to propose tonight, so
Yeah.
I appreciate, and they go beyond what the city has, because I've spent time reading them. I've spent time reading the FAA's draft that came out. So I want to spend time tonight with mine, and I also, because I was appointed at the same time that Martin was appointed, I have questions. I want to look at the draft. I believe that Mr. Cherry represented that the lines for where the jurisdiction of the airport have already been established and voted on. I believe that it's the board that established and voted on those. I have questions about where the lines are drawn. Just because the board voted on those earlier in the year, I don't believe that they're necessarily cut in stone. And I want to look at where those lines are drawn and why they're drawn where they are, to see if we can't draw them in the least restrictive manner that they are drawn. Because I believe 5,000 feet at the end of both runways may be an excessive length. I want to ask questions about what planes are using this airport and how often they're used. Comments today indicate that it's only being used in the daytime. Why is that? What are the possibilities of this being used in the nighttime? I've heard comments in the past about whether or not this is even an instrument used airport. I know that the airport is important to the city of Castroville, but I've got questions about how often it's used, what kinds of planes use it. So I have a lot of questions that I want answered tonight. And so I'm investigating a lot of things that I want to have answers to before I'm willing to pass the regulations that are drafted.
Thank you. And I'd ask y'all also, Deborah Howe has everybody's email address, am I correct?
Yes, she does.
Okay, so maybe as soon as y'all finish whatever y'all decide to put together tonight, it's probably gonna be premature for those landowners that we want y'all to meet with, but get it to Deborah so she can send it out to all of us, which will include those landowners, right? Because they were all there, am I correct?
As long as they left their information, I think they all left their information, but everybody that she has that contact information from that night and from others that have expressed interest, we'll get that.
I mean, we'll personally make sure that the two main ones are known, are in the loop. And then we just need to find out. I'm still wondering, at the end of the runway, right across the river, that Lang
I think they
is,
shut it off at the river, Chris.
oh, is it shut off at the river? Your thing here?
I think the new one's shut off the river.
No, it goes past the river.
It goes past the river on
There
the
was-
south.
There was about a big piece of property right there, and I don't know if those people even know.
I don't know who that is.
I know them, so I'm gonna find out, but anyway, we probably need to let those people, Jennifer, somehow we'll get together and see how we can make sure those people get a letter from us, and the reason we want them to send them a letter is they can't say they didn't know. And the county we will do it, we'll send it out and take care of it. Okay? And anybody else y'all think we need to send it to, once you send it to us, we will send them a letter and say, hey, you need to know this is what's being done, and go from there. So, thank you guys.